to this week's Let's Talk Aging. My name is Molly Wisniewski of the Upside to Aging, and I am speaking with today Home in Place project founder, Nichole Kain. Nichole is a certified age in place specialist who incorporates universal design to create livable and sustainable spaces to live. And Nathan, he and his wife, Nikki Lamister, are founders of Smart CEU Hub's course platforms so that recreational therapists all over the country can stay current with professional training and required CEUs. So Nichole and Nathan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Molly.
Yeah, I'm so excited for our conversation. Both of you have such a unique background in the field, and I think we'll really be able to have an informed conversation. So with that, just to get us started, how did you get started in the field, and what are your roles in aging services? Nathan, I'll start with you.
Okay, so originally when I started out in the aging field, I was a waiter at a long-term care facility. It was like an upscale, cool place to be, and my aunt actually was working there, and so that was my first ever introduction to it. Later, after finishing college, I got my degree in recreational therapy, and my first job right out of school was a director of activities at a skilled nursing facility. So kind of went full circle. So when I came into the facility, I got to see what life was like from the perspective of, what the quality of life is in the facility when people, and unfortunately this happens, when they get put into these places, the family kind of leaves them, and it's, like it's up to you. You create their day. And then from there, I worked in behavioral health settings with geriatrics, and then also I've written courses on this subject. So yeah, I love this.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Cool.
How about you, Nichole? Well, how did you get started in the field, and what's your current role?
So when I was younger, I was really close with my grandfather, and his name was Happy, and he went by Hap. And as I grew up, when I was in high school, he had a couple of TIAs, which are mini strokes, and I went with him to his outpatient rehab. And through that, I learned about physical therapy and occupational therapy. And the moment I heard whatever description it was that described occupational therapy, I said, that's what I'm going to do. And before that, I had wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. Both my parents are teachers, so I always knew I was going to go into education at some point. And but then once I found out about OT, that was it. And so my grandfather passed away before I graduated from OT school. But after I graduated, we moved to California, and I worked there for a while, and then I ended up going back to school and getting a master's in gerontology. And so with that, I was able to do some adjunct teaching at local universities, and that's been just an incredible joy for me. And so teaching is, I say, literally in my blood, because there's so many generations of teachers in my family. But I took a break to be a stay-at-home mom, and coming out of that, it's like, okay, what do I want to do? How can I pull together all of these pieces from what I really loved about OT and what I love about gerontology and what I loved about this lifelong hobby of design and interiors and creating homes, and combining these. And so what I focus on now in my job and my company that I've started is a universal design. So creating these spaces where someone is able to live with ease, no matter what physical abilities that they might have. And with my background in gerontology, I do have a specialization in aging in place.
Yeah.
And so for me, it just all comes back to the home. And for me also, it's a way to honor my grandfather.
Yeah. Well, Nichole, you mentioned aging in place, and the two with gerontology have kind of become very close. 90% of people have kind of expressed the desire to age in their own homes, or aging in place, whatever that setting might be for them. That's a lot of people. And what do you see are some of the challenges and opportunities for the industry in facing these needs?
There's a lot of both challenges and opportunities. I feel like we're living in a fantastic time to be looking and exploring this. So one of the primary challenges is the built environment. So our physical structure of our houses are not built for aging. And I don't know if you guys have heard the term of a Peter Pan house, where it's this idea of designing a house where you're never going to grow old.
Oh.
You're just going to be young forever in this home. And so there's curvy stairs, and there's, you know, these things that don't make it easy to age in place in these houses. And so there are houses that are still being designed as kind of Peter Pan houses, but the industry is changing. And so I see one of my roles as to help facilitate the change. And so how can we kind of educate people at any age to ask for things? And because it is driven by consumer demand, and as people are aging, and of course we've got the baby boomers, and how can we really to educate the public and give them words to ask for. So perhaps we want at least one entry that has no steps. And where's that going to be? And we want to have wider hallways, because when we're lugging our suitcases or when we have a new couch that comes in, it's going to be a lot easier to get that down the hallway. But you know what? It's going to be a lot easier if someone in your family is using a mobility device, especially a power wheelchair, which is much wider. And what about if you put in a spa-like shower that has no step entry and it's beautiful? And that's what comes back to this key of universal design, is that it is accessible and it is beautiful. And also it's adaptable, so you can change it. So an example of adaptability would be stacked walk-in closets. So you might have a bedroom or a pantry on the main level, and right above it is a walk-in closet in a bedroom, which you can put an elevator in later.
Oh,
and so it's ready and set up. Another example of adaptability is if you're going to do one of those beautiful spa-like showers, you can have a glass wall that is removable later in case you needed to make the whole entire bathroom what's called a wet room, or something that if there's a rolling shower chair, you can roll it from the toilet into the shower and roll it anywhere around the bathroom that you might need.
wow. Yeah, it sounds like something I want now.
Right, I know, that's the point. So that's a really good point too. So we are we are definitely living in a Peter Pan house in my own home, but as we're making changes, what we're doing is changing out knobs, on the doors that just aren't our style, and we're putting in lever door handles. And so lever door handles is an element of universal design because it's much easier for anyone with any physical abilities to be able to use. And for me, when I'm coming into my office and I've got a handful of things, I can knock this lever with my elbow and get in the door rather than having to hold my tea and all sorts of weirdness trying to get in. Yeah. So lever door handles, rocker light switches, even LED lights that are going to prevent someone from having to get on a ladder to change a light bulb is an element of universal design.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. When you talk about universal design, I've only really heard of it in the context of the community. So designing a community for older adults, but when you do that, you're designing for everybody. And it really does sound like the same goes for just younger generation or single family homes, even for individuals. So that's great. One of my questions was too, and you kind of hinted to this, Nichole, was long-term care supports and skilled care. Do you think that in designing for aging in place, it's possible to create spaces that are equipped? You mentioned the spa-like showers, which is wonderful, but that are equipped to actually handle the needs of skilled care. So spaces that will allow for home care to come in and very easily just kind of assume their roles.
Absolutely. And another kind of buzzword in the industry right now is multi-generational living, or designing for multi-generational families. So this is where, a grandparent, a midlife adult and then child might be all living together, and usually there's an in-law suite attached, and that in-law suite could later turn into a caregiver suite, or it could turn into a rental suite. And again, it's this adaptability of it. But one thing with long-term care that I wanted to mention that I don't know if many people are talking about is this idea of a NORC. Have you guys heard of NORCs? Naturally Occurring Retirement Community.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So the idea is that it'll be a geographic area that's identified either by the residents or by an exterior expert. And it might be an apartment complex, a condo complex, even a city or a region of the city, and where most of the population is over 65. And so there's a village to village network. The Beacon Hill Village is the most famous example of a village network, but the village network is where the residents come together and say, hey, we need these services to be able to stay in our homes. We need, and it's community identified, transportation, grocery delivery, someone to come in, bring the groceries, but also put them away in a place where I can easily reach them. Or maybe even it's open the orange juice top for me before you put it away. Can you just open it and then put it away? And maybe it's get my cat into the carrier because I need to go to the vet and he's going to run around the house and I can't get under the bed to get him. Maybe it's, and then handyman services too. I've got a leaky toilet. Who can I trust that isn't going to come in and rip me off? And so it's not only building this network of volunteers who are able to do those things, but also a trusted network of service providers. Who can I trust to let in my home? And so I definitely encourage people, if they're interested in this type of care, check out Village to Village Network. They have access to villages around the country, and you can see if one is close to you. So that's one model of care to address the NORC. Another one is a NORC with an SSP, which is a supportive service program, and this is usually expert identified. So a village is resident identified, and a NORC SSP is expert identified. So this is someone like me, a gerontologist, who might go in and say, okay, we've got a high number of older adults in this area. Let's do a survey. Let's talk to people and see if they would be interested in something like this, and see what the community might need. So it's expert led, but with resident input.
I love that. It's encouraging to hear that, because there are so many people that are aging in their communities who might not realize that there are those types of support services available to them. So I'll link to that below as well. But Nathan, I don't know about you, but that sounds a lot like senior living to me. Only maybe in separate living homes, but the idea of having all of these services come in and assist the person. And one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, or hope that you can tell us a little bit more, because social isolation is a huge issue among older adults who are living on their own. And I was wondering if the recreational therapy sector has kind of expanded into the home care market, or if they haven't, do you think that they should?
Yes, actually. So there are recreational therapists that have started. One of the struggles that has been in our field has been getting billing to pay for, coming to a person's house versus in a hospital. But there are ways that we've found to do that. In fact, which state was it? It was one of the states where they actually billed auto insurance instead of medical insurance. And it was for accidents and injuries that occurred during something of that nature. And that was the way that they were able to see the people. So it's kind of creative. Right now, there's a couple bills in Congress that are trying to get that changed. So there's a lot of growth in our field in that way. But I wanted to say something because Nichole mentioned some really cool stuff. And one of my businesses that I started a while back was called Suburban Butler. And what it was is it was a concierge service, so where people got the groceries, their other stuff delivered to their house. And one of the marketing points we had was we were going to assisted living and other places where people necessarily if they were able to do everything else, they're able to drive, if they're able to get these needs met, they'd be able to stay in their house longer. And so I thought that was the coolest thing, is like you're saving them thousands of dollars a year, plus you're getting them a chance to remain in a normalcy situation. And so that was really cool. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there are some really cool, like in the long-term care type setting, ideas that were brought up. One of them was creating like a village that looks just like the place that they grew up in, with like a store and a library and other places, and like their street names instead of being Hall A or whatever. And it kind of brings back for like people with dementia that are in the older stages, and being able to have that feeling of I'm safe, this feels good. um, Isolation is a huge deal, obviously. If you can't drive, if you can't go places, if your family doesn't visit you, if you don't have the physical ability to get out of bed, these types of things. However, like if we were, like she was saying, if we were able to, come to the houses for a lot cheaper than $30,000 a year is what I was hearing, is like $30,000 is what it costs, which is outrageous, to have an in-home caregiver. But then again, you have to pay them. So, but for the person that is dealing with that, it means the world to them to have somebody there. So if there was some way to bridge that gap where insurance would pay for it more versus having the individual have to pay for it, right. I think that would be a huge step in the right direction.
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm a huge advocate for activities anyway, but I think it's definitely meets a need that we're finding, especially as the amount of diagnosis for Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia are occurring within the home. The person is still living at home, whether that be with family or on their own. And I think the recreational therapy specifically can start addressing these needs in a different way than in a non-medical way, I guess you can say, than some in-home caregivers. So I appreciate that. I think that reason. Nichole, you have a diverse set of education and training in your background, which is pretty unique, I think, in this field. A lot of people kind of stay on one path. But have you worked specifically with individuals with dementia?
Mm-hmm.
And if so, do you see the specialized care in the way you design a home? Is there a specific way that you design a home for somebody with dementia than there is somebody without?
Yes. So I think it depends on what the client is looking for. So if they're wanting to stay in the home that they're in, then we try to keep things as absolutely familiar as possible. And so we avoid big changes. Or if we are going to suggest big changes, the earlier the better, because the person will have time to adapt to these new changes and become more familiar with them. In residential care facilities, there's a challenge, because if someone is moved to a residential care facility and they have dementia, everything is new and everything is confusing. I remember I had this one person who kept urinating in the potted plant in their bedroom in the middle of the night. And we found out that it was because that was the orientation of where their bathroom was at home. So we ended up turning their bed in the room, and then they found their way to the bathroom. So, and then the other thing to keep in mind too is wayfinding. How are people going to be getting around if they are in a residential care facility? As dementia progresses, their vision decreases and their peripheral vision decreases too. And so wayfinding signs need to be located either on the ground or at a low level, not up here, not at standing height. They need to be much lower. So that's something to consider for residential care facilities. Designing things in the home, it's going to be bringing it back to the familiar, keeping things as familiar as possible, but eliminating things that could cause a problem. So eliminating clutter, really trying to reduce the clutter and keeping the pathways very, very clear and open. And I'll go into houses and the rugs are very worn and old, and there'll be bumps in the rug, like the rug is sagging I guess is the best way to describe it. So really, stressing the point that let's tighten this rug. This is a service. We can hire someone to come in and tighten the rug so that it's a smooth surface, so that it's not a tripping hazard anymore. So we're keeping this familiar rug that has the actual wear patterns you can see, because that's where people have traveled so long. But now it's safe, and now we can keep it in the house. And so looking at even just those little things, but you want to address the safety barriers immediately. So if the front entryway has little tiny steps and it's hard to get up to, how can we change that so that the front porch still feels the same? So you still can have access to the flowers that feel really good. But can we make the steps wider? So they're what's called a walker step. So they're much wider, so you can fit an entire walker on that step. Or would a ramp be more appropriate for this person? And so it's looking at the individual needs too. But I think it goes back to just keeping things as familiar as possible. And then if things become a safety hazard, for example, cooking, if someone is living alone and there becomes a habit of leaving the stove on, then there are things to do for that. Whether it's changing it out to an induction cooktop, which means that the cooktop has to have the pan that matches it. And if the wrong pan is put there, or if the stove is left on, it's not hot to the touch. It's cool, right? Yeah. So it's not hot to the touch, and it doesn't pose a safety risk. I had someone who kept leaving the gas stove on, and we ended up with the family's permission, we ended up having the gas company come out and turn it off, because she didn't need it. She was getting meal delivery every day, but she would just go and just by habit just turn it on and walk away and forget about it. So we ended up just turning that entirely off, so she could still wake up and go and turn it on. And now it wasn't a safety risk, and she was still being able to have these hot meals every day that were delivered to her. So I think it just goes back to a really individualized setting if we're modifying the home, or if you're looking at a care facility or more broad modifications, then there are those too. But I do tend to work on the individual level. What is right for this person in this environment and this family?
Yeah, I love that. Person-centered is so important, especially with this population. And I thank you for giving that example, because I think it really highlights that sometimes we think that somebody with dementia is doing things because they have dementia, whereas it's not really their diagnosis or those symptoms that are causing their behavior, but it's actually like you said, it's just they were oriented to that space, and they were just going by what they know. And I think that's really important to highlight. So I appreciate that. Nathan, how do you think recreational therapists can influence or assist others in the aging services, particularly when it comes to dementia care?
So there are a plethora of interventions that we use in the in hospital setting, including reminiscing, exercise, things. Exercise is known as like miracle grow for the brain, is like what I like to call it. And when you're older, it activates some of the neurons in the brain so that their memory starts coming back for little bits of time, and they're able to do some of the tasks that they were able to do before. Cooking, doing things that they would have done normally growing up, like folding clothes, cleaning, doing things that make them feel as normal as possible. So one of the goals in a long-term facility is to create that normalcy, like I said earlier, to bring back those feelings of, okay, I can do this. There's confidence in this. I'm living my life. I'm meeting new people. Maybe it's the same person, but it's new to them. But it brings them back to a place where they feel good. Because like when they're frustrated, it's either the task is too big, or they're unfamiliar with it, or they're like, this, why do I need to do this? They don't understand the reason behind it. And so reasoning with somebody who's having a problem in that area is not the way to necessarily reach that person. Right. You don't tell them, like you are okay, you're in this place right now, you aren't going to be hurt, in all this stuff. And when in their mind they think you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
So like it's creating that world that they can live in where they feel at peace, and joy.
Yeah, I love that. A lot of people, I think there's a stereotype of recreations to just be bingo and ball bouncing. You hear it a lot, and it is, yeah, it's so much
Yeah.
more. It's so much more.
Babies, bingo,
Yeah.
birthdays, and yeah.
Right. Yeah, but the interventions that you mentioned are really important um, on an individual level, because you really have an opportunity to turn somebody's day around now, or even a workforce development, because powerful, I think. So many people are talking about the growing needs because of our aging population. But then in the same sentence, they're saying there's not enough people coming into the field addressing these needs. And I was wondering if you guys can really speak to what you think are ways that the aging services can um, maybe entice people to get into the field.
Well, let's start with this. First of all, in our, the recreational therapy realm of entering the field, if we're talking about that, one of the big things they talk about on our end all the time is the amount of school you're going to have to go to versus the salary you're going to get paid. And that's like literally the one of the barriers is, is it going to be worth it to me individually? And it's unfortunate that that's the case, but we got to deal with what we have, and most people are gonna go down that path. But like for our field in particular, one of the things was the 3-hour rule, and I think as an occupational therapist you're aware of the 3-hour rule, Nichole.
What's a 3-hour rule? Tell me about it.
The 3-hour rule was where somebody would receive therapy for at least 3 hours a day of physical, occupational, speech, etc. And Medicare would give them, reimburse them for that time, and they could bill insurance. Well, recreational therapy used to be on that as well and used to satisfy that rule. However, later we were taken off, and when that happened, our services, they started like combining us with activity directors in the sense that they thought that that's what we did all day, and we couldn't actually provide purposeful interventions. And so we're actively trying to get back there, but then once that's solved, then there will be a lot of recreational therapists entering the field, because now hospitals can justify hiring us. They're getting money back from us doing what we're doing. Otherwise we're just an expense. And so that's one of the issues we're facing right there. And then also licensing. There's 4 states right now where recreational therapy is licensed, and we're trying to get licensed in all 50 states. And that goes back to the difference between what an activity director would do and a recreational therapist would do,
right?
In those settings. And so yeah, there's a lot of little things that need to happen, but I can speak for recreational therapy. That's what I feel is the way that we would get more professionals in it from our point of view.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of thoughts on this. So there is a big movement right now called Connect the Ages. So check it out, Connect the Ages. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So she's doing some amazing work on this, and she's bringing in VR, virtual reality. It's just so cool. So she's just at the forefront of this, really trying to go, cross multidisciplinary and multi-generational, and just really trying to do this. She's doing big work in this. So I would really encourage anyone who is really passionate about this to connect with her, connect the ages. One thought that I've had for a little while now on this topic is how to get more people interested in working in actually care facilities too, because one problem in assisted living facilities and nursing facilities is high staff turnover. And so how can you reduce this high staff turnover, but also getting caring skilled professionals in there? And I think that a really fantastic collaboration would be with local college students. So if nursing facilities and assisted living facilities are in a town where a college or a community college or whatever it is located, I think that absolutely they should reach out there, because that the pay that these people are going to be getting is going to be really comparable to, wherever else they're going to be working during this college stay. So they're getting this, really an opportunity to do heartfelt work. Yeah. And I know when I was in college, I worked at a makeup store. It wasn't heartfelt work. Right. And so, but I could have had this, and I didn't even think of it then. And I was in school for OT. Right. But it wasn't something that I was even thinking about. Mm-hmm. And so you'll see on college campuses sometimes where parents of a child with a disability will put up flyers, and they've identified that this is a great pool to pull from. And I think that these senior living facility, I think, should be tapping into this population and going there and doing these in-services and saying, hey, here's why it would be a great idea. And then if they need a little training, if they need to be, a low-level license to be able to work legally there, then the facility could even pay for the training. And I think that would be a very good investment that they would be getting out of this, because now you're going to be kind of like raising this next generation at the college level. And then the other thing that we can do as parents, I have a 5-year-old, and so how am I exposing him to older adults? Because my passion and the what set me on my career trajectory is my relationship with my grandfather. Right. And so how am I exposing my son to this older population? And so that's something that we as parents can be thinking about too. And if nothing else, if I'm not raising a little, next generation workforce guy, he's going to have empathy for this population.
Yeah, that's so true. I intergenerational is so important. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing because they do need the two generations need that middle person to connect them. But mm-hmm. when they do, it's magic. Yeah. It's amazing what can happen when, a child and a older adult get together. It's really something. Wow, those were really great suggestions, and I think speak to the needs of this field, but then also the career pathways, that there are multiple ways to get into this field, that it's not just nursing or direct caregiving, that there are other opportunities for people, like you said, the students. And it sounds like senior living has a great opportunity to really start marketing themselves in that way, to allow people to know that, one, that they're there, and two, that they're a viable career source. But then also, to your point, Nathan, in terms of funding and ensuring that these therapies, like recreational therapy, are included and are acknowledged as really meaningful interventions for this population. We've covered so much ground, and we really haven't even hit the iceberg of this field. But I kind of want to open up the floor, and you both have different perspectives of the field and where it's headed and what the needs are, and just kind of open it up to you in terms of what you think may be an individualized solution to some of these issues that we're finding and challenges. What are the opportunities for you in your own field, and what you hope to accomplish as the number of older adults continues to age?
Well, I think that what you're doing is essential. And I said this offline, but I want to say it again, that I am so appreciative of what you're doing, because having these conversations is essential. And you are literally paving a path for the next generation to come through also. And this is the big work. You're doing the big work. And I just so appreciate being part of this.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you joining us, because like I said, that you have a valuable perspective in this, and it's needed to be heard. Plus, you care so much. You can tell. You can tell just in talking with you that you care so much about the work that you're doing, and that you have a personal investment in this as well. But I I think we all can agree that it's for the residents. It's for the people themselves. For me, it was the residents because I worked in long-term care, but um, the individuals themselves who need not be forgotten. That
Yeah.
all of these things are happening and that all of these solutions are occurring, but the center of it is to make their life easier and to make their life more normal, um, as they continue to, they have a lot on their plate. A diagnosis of dementia, and even those who may not have a diagnosis of dementia, um, it's difficult, or it can be difficult. So to help is the best, I think.
So this is something that I was thinking. You know, I obviously, like I said, I run businesses, and I feel like as any professional that works in the field, if you create more businesses of sorts that serve this population, you bring awareness, you
Mhm.
bring jobs, you bring, you actually solve a problem, and all of those things. So I feel like we need more people with business skills. I know that that's not usually what people say, but like being able to take that initiative and make the difference versus just talk about it.
Right.
It takes some guts, but I think that as a whole, if we have a lot of people taking chances and making a difference together, we're gonna be able to meet the need. Because I hear that the next generation that's going to be aging is going to be humongous,
Yeah.
and
Our
there's not
generation.
enough service out there already, so we need more service.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah,
I agree. It's terrifying when you see the graphs of the baby boomers, and then right behind them the millennials, and it's like, oh, we need solutions now. Like, this is going to be an issue that's going to continue. I mean, we talk 20 years, but we're really talking um, 40, 50 plus years into the future. Yeah,
yeah.
I, I agree. Oh, well, on that lovely note, no, but really, I thank you guys so much for taking the time today to just tell us a little bit more about what you're doing in the field. Your work matters, and it's speaking to a need that is growing. I think we've kind of hit that hard. And I was really curious as to what you all see as solutions. And you really gave some viable solutions that I think a lot of people really need to consider. So thank you for that. And thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
Oh,
Thank you
thank you,
for having
Molly.
us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I will be linking to both of your sites in the link below. So those that want to find you or learn more about you, we'll try to make that as easy as possible for them. And